and if everyone could just say, you know, who you are, what community you represent. Oh, and did I say New Haven? New Haven in the house. What community you represent, your company name, and your licenses.
Hi, my name is Joseph Jones. I am from New Haven as well. My company name is Bay Breeze Botanicals, and I ended up with the manufacturer license, product manufacturer license, packaging license, and delivery license.
Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Kibra, for inviting me to speak on this panel. My name is Tiana Hercules. I represent Hartford as well as New London because that's my hometown, so it's always nice to be back in this part of the state. And proud mother of 3 amazing children, criminal defense attorney by trade, and licenses. The name of my businesses are Lady Jane as well as Connecticut Cultivation Solutions. So we are one of the Section 149 large-scale cultivators and also working on 2 equity joint ventures, which will likely be retail dispensaries.
Hi everyone, I'm Jocelyn Serta, and I'm excited to be part of this conversation today. I'm with Shangri-La Dispensaries, and I'm representing the Hartford community. We currently have licenses in retail, Section 149 cultivation, manufacturing, and food and beverage.
So, we did talk a little bit about the license types, but let's talk about what we have. So, if you could explain like what your licenses are, what you'll be able to do, and you know, a little bit of background on each of those.
Sure. So for the product manufacturing, we'll be able to take biomass from a cultivator or a grower, and then take that and make, whether it's distill it for vapes or topicals, or individualize it into eighths or halves, quarters, whatever you want to sell the flower as. With the packaging, we will take those manufactured products or flower from the biomass, package it up, whether it's the tubes for the vapes or the bags or the jars for the flower, the topical, and we'll package that up. And our delivery license will be to deliver from the business to the end customer. So from the retail store to your house.
And just to talk a little bit, I've been hearing things about some issues that most of the product packagers are encountering because they don't necessarily have those other licenses. Can you talk, are you kind of aware of what's going on with them? Like, so the packagers really can't have product of their own. So like a large scale cultivator would have to subcontract out to a packager, and that is costly, can be time consuming, and I think with a lot of us trying to stand up our businesses and really just become somewhat profitable, like that would be, another red line for us. And so it's been difficult, but luckily you have that relationship. So,
because otherwise you would be paying to transport. I don't know if you all are familiar with seed to sell or track and trace, but you would have to then have your product, scan it out, transport it, pay someone because you don't have that license to transport it to wherever you need to transport it and then back. So it does help being able to have multiple licenses.
And Tiana, can you talk a little bit about Section 149, or Jocelyn, you too? So maybe if you all want to team up on, kind of explaining the process and the license type and what you can do and what you're thinking about doing.
Yeah, so I'll just talk about what we're planning to do specifically, and then Jocelyn, please chime in on what your business model will be. And so we're probably going to be building around a 60,000 square foot facility, and we'll be working at various ends of the supply chain with biomass. So we'll be extracting, we'll also be cultivating and growing, and then producing product as well, gummies, food and beverage, and pretty much everything that's under the umbrella that we can do with the biomass, as well as wholesaling it to other product manufacturers, and then ultimately at the end of the supply chain, into the retail stores to our direct consumers. Probably looking at about 25,000 square feet of canopy in the facility. And so, yeah, so that's what we're planning to do.
So the good thing about the Section 149 license is that you can do vertical integration. So that was really appealing for that license type. The only thing I believe that we cannot do under Section 149, correct me if I'm wrong, is we cannot deliver directly to consumers, and we are not able to package in shop. So we are also afforded 2 additional licenses as an equity joint venture, and so we will be looking to open additional retail, 2 retail locations under the Section 149.
And we just got joined by Louis Vega. So we'll let Lou get settled and jump in, but Lou, basically so far, we've introduced ourselves and we began to talk about the licenses that we have won and the communities we plan.
And we are doing 2 joint ventures for adult use retail. And then, what else? So the biggest thing that we do is community for the reentry section. So I was convicted of growing and producing cannabis and was sentenced to 8 one-year charges for each one of those, so 8 years total. Before that, all the normal rigmarole of the, I guess, the war on drugs, you know, call it, or I've been arrested a couple times, things happen. So the biggest portion of our community that we're really focusing on is reentry. So the individuals that are of the, what we like to call now the legacy market, as they re-enter the community, or if they were working in the legacy market, giving them an opportunity to move over to the adult use space, either through intellectual property, licensing agreements, or helping them stand their businesses up so that they're actually able to create their own brands and not only shop them in Connecticut, but shop them throughout the country. Ideally, we're focusing on individuals that come from our community. I'm in Bridgeport, Connecticut. So we are looking at the legacy individuals. So who better to, like I say all the time, who better to sell weed than guys and gals that have been selling weed their entire life? And depending where you are and how much the policing is happening, kind of determines your access level. I grew up in a time where stop and frisk was a really big thing, just like everybody else here. But my I guess my interactions were that we were stopped and frisked in primarily Puerto Rican neighborhoods. Is my experience. Stopped, frisked, tickets, arrests, being held, kind of that entire realm of it. So now that we have a chance to do this, that's the community I'm really, and I know that everybody here is going to focus on their own communities and everyone is going to get a great opportunity, but that's kind of where I've put my focus. Thank you so much. And once again, sorry about being late. My tardiness was unacceptable, but
Yes,
you are.
Not something I ever wanted to do. However, growing up in an urban environment and being a criminal defense attorney, seeing the constant ravages from the drug war and what it has done to communities of color, once I started to see the sea change nationally about legalization of cannabis, I really was inspired to figure out how do I use my skills to be part of this conversation and to ensure that my community in some way benefits from this newly legal emerging market, knowing that so many people who I grew up with, loved ones, relatives, have been damaged by over-policing and racist criminalization of marijuana. And so, you know, that was really what sparked my curiosity to wanting to get involved in the industry and not really knowing which angle. And then once I started to learn how it was going to roll out here in Connecticut, I said, okay, somebody with an MBA, a law degree, and all of the skills that I have cannot navigate this seemingly, you know, what's being touted as a social equity and a fair process, and I know that the game is rigged, right? So it's really like a social experiment to see really what this was all about. And then I found myself really being more and more passionate about the actual plant, right? And what the plant can do in terms of healing, in terms of wellness, in terms of helping people cope with things like PTSD, anxiety, depression, and so forth, and pain, and started learning really that this is can be something of tremendous benefit for my community on many levels, from the wellness perspective as well as the social justice perspective, and really wanting to just inspire other people to take a risk on yourself and say, if you believe in something and if you really just kind of put your head to the ground and say, I'm gonna figure this out, that really, some really cool things can happen. You're gonna meet some amazing people along the way, and you're gonna find yourself being the CEO of a, hopefully, multi-million-dollar company one day. So, you know, it's really a testament to what you can do. I'm proud and really, you know, honored to be in this position, especially alongside so many passionate people who know so much about this industry. So it's been an incredible journey so far, and I just can't wait to see what all of us do here in Connecticut.
This question always gets me super emotional. So when I was 20, I was diagnosed with Crohn's and colitis. It was a surprise. And I had to take a bi-monthly infusion, Remicade, and that was not working. I wasn't eating, I didn't have energy, I felt crappy, you know. I was in college at the time, and roommate and I were watching a documentary on Vice about a 13-year-old whose parents moved to Colorado so they can administer treatments using THC, and it was the only thing that helped reduce the inflammation in his body. So I was like, F it, I'm gonna smoke this, you know, I'm gonna, you know, start consuming and see what happens. And it's honestly been the only thing, one of the few things that have helped me manage my symptoms. I also just suffer from depression, PTSD, anxiety, and just seeing how, if I didn't consume, I always say, like, I wouldn't be here speaking with you guys, sharing my experiences, because who I was then is not reflective of who I am now. And this was through the help of a medicinal plant, right? And after just seeing the effects it had on my own body, and just meeting other people who use cannabis medicinally, I just wanted to share this access with everyone, and really just help take away the negative stigma from cannabis consumers. You know, we're not just lazy potheads or, you know, whatever. We sometimes, or a lot of us, need this plant to survive. And cannabis has really, truly changed my life, clearly. So I'm just, you know, grateful for this natural occurrence.
My why? Well, I've been a cannabis user since I was 16 years old. On my 16th birthday, me and my friends looked at each other and they said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, your big brother knows where to get a dub sack. Smoke 2 blunts." And that's where I started cannabis. I didn't know about any of the other things other than I was just a young guy chilling in the neighborhood with my friends, and I wanted to smoke weed because that's what was part of my culture. Like a lot of us, I'm second generation cannabis. To this day, I smoke a joint with my father. You know, I taught my father how to grow weed. I have Crohn's disease as well, and they removed my large intestine by the time I was 13. But once again, I wasn't up on the medicinal side of it or why that worked. I just knew that holds you back. So if we can do things like there's current legislation on right now in the state, sponsored by Anthony Nolan, and he's actually pushing for some of those laws to be changed. So for all your representatives, yeah, we're entrepreneurs all here doing this, and every single one of these people is at the Capitol fighting for these rights the same way. You know, there's still people incarcerated for what I was locked up for and now get to do legally, where I get to have super cool friends that when I'm at my PO's office, I'm looking back and I'm like, I got a Cannabis thing. I'm like, you know, or if I meet a lawyer or something, I'm actually caught. I'm like, yeah, some shit happens, you know. So, or sometimes you're good friends where you're chilling and smoking. Win cups, what you win? Big shout out to Evan.
Second place indica? Okay.
See, there you go. And shout out.
Congratulations, and this is a social equity qualifying. Yes.
So hopefully as those things go past, the people that haven't gotten in at this place, we get them in some place. And we continue to support those that are in this community in their own ways. You know what I mean? This is a real tough atmosphere.
Yes, it is.
Like, I keep her.
Just a quick question. This is for all of us.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so everybody's here probably really to hear how we got into this, right? And the thick of things. So there were a couple of entry points. Section 149, it had the big price. Okay, let's talk about Section 149. Okay, so Section 149, the license. In order to get that license, you had to qualify for social equity. That meant you could not have made more than $236,000 a year, roundabouts there. You had to grow up in a disproportionately impacted area or community, and you had to have a certain level of ownership and control of your company. But guess how much the license costs? Remember I told you couldn't make, how much couldn't you make more than? $230, right? Guess how much the license costs? $3 million. So that's what Connecticut calls social equity. So that was one entry point. So, you know, that just meant that in order for us to qualify, we had to pick partners, and we had to pick partners with $3 million. And most people with $3 million didn't come from our community or look like us. So it put us in, you know, a position where we had to find the best situation and try to make it work so that we could bring it home for our communities. But other entry points were the lottery. So who here went through the lottery? Ah, okay, so we got 2 lotteries. So tell us about, so Section 149, it was different. We applied, it was earlier, but tell us about the lottery process.
The lottery was interesting. So we definitely went about it a certain way, and we applied for multiple licenses. I believe for retail, if I'm not mistaken, for the social equity license.
And you applied on the social equity side?
Social equity, yeah. It was $250 per application. And we put in multiple applications. So I believe we ended up submitting about 1,000 for the retail license. So 250 times, right? 1,000. So with Connecticut, there isn't a cap on how many applications you can submit, and you can also win, multiple license types. So we're a little aggressive, but one of the things is we wanted to obtain a license. So I think that's what I want to share. Yeah.
So I didn't apply for the lottery at all. But how'd you do? Did you put in 1,000 license too?
I won't say the number, but we put in a bunch of applications too. We got lucky. We didn't even expect to get more than one, but we got more than one. So really like playing a lot.
I guess one thing that may be important to this conversation, even though I didn't win through the lottery, I did submit through the lottery under my business separate from my partnership, and I only put in about 10 applications in, because that's all I was putting in there once I saw thousands from certain companies thing to kind of demystify for those who may be thinking about applying in the future is that it really wasn't a complicated process. I spent a lot of time, like a year, researching other states, like lottery process, like application processes like Massachusetts, California, and there was a lot more to those applications than what Connecticut requires. So I would just say that could assuage some of the fear and like mystique around all of this. It's really basic demographic information. If you're doing it through the social equity side, you know, those documents that you have to provide to verify that you are actually a social equity applicant, so residency, your income, so your tax returns, things of that nature, a net worth statement, which really is just you saying that your net worth is your, you know, your income or your assets versus your liabilities. Mine wasn't much, so, but it's not like they verify it, so I don't really know why they even asked that, but anyway, and I think residency to prove where you actually resided for a certain number of years. So there really wasn't a lot to that process, I would say, and then it's the background check, certainly making sure that you haven't been involved in any like wire fraud or white collar crime or anything like that, that would, you know, speak to truth and veracity and your ability to be trusted with financial assets and things of that nature. So for anybody who may be thinking about applying to the lottery, we don't know if there will be or when there will be another lottery, just to kind of let you know it's not a really burdensome process. The biggest thing is having the capital to do it. So
Yes, thank you for that.
Can I say one thing regarding the documents and everything? Because the state didn't really ask for a lot, and I remember just meeting up with a group of my friends on Wednesday, and we kind of have like the study group and just, you know, read up on, you know, what was required of the application. And believe it or not, you know, one of the, you know, we can sit here and say, oh, you know, it's not a lot, which it isn't, but a big issue in underserved communities is a lot of folks don't have that information. You know, I had to like reorder my birth certificate, you know, and make sure I got it in on time. A lot of folks didn't have access to proving, you know, what type of income, you know, and a lot of my friends weren't able to apply because they didn't have that paperwork. So I think if that's something that, this is something that you want to pursue, get all your documents together, get your paper trail together, because that's just what's going to ultimately help you.
And then on an opposite side, so I put 0 lottery tickets in. I didn't have the funds. You know what I mean? I would have killed to be able to have the funds to put in my own lottery tickets, to not have to take an investor from someplace else. And then it gets treated, and so yes, so I got a 149. Which means I sold a lot.
Yeah, tell them about what you sold.
well, I would just say one thing to that point, Louise, and that brings up.
Let's talk about it.
If I can just, before you go into that, because we all know that, just to think about, you know, collective or cooperative economics, right, within our communities, right? Like no one of us probably has $3 million laying around, but if you are thinking about getting into this industry, really thinking about how you can come together collaboratively, you know, as a community, with your network and your wider network, to figure out how you can play this game, because it is, at the end of the day, all about the Benjamins, unfortunately, but that is the way it is. It is a business at the end of the day. So there are, now that we kind of are sitting at this position, know some things and how things could be done differently and what people could do to kind of ward off some of those, you know, pitfalls, or, you know, the maybe pitfalls in the end, we'll see, once we determined.
You make deals you don't want to make, even though you have to, it's tough. You make it in the best interest that you can of yourself and get everything set up, but then you have to take the seat and say, what am I going to do with this? So now, the state kept this in such a locked up place, and that money wasn't accessible from our communities. What do? We start our own funds. We start our own trusts. We start our, so a fund, already, this is what I decided, we created a fund to actually fund individuals looking to move into this space. There are funds all over the world, every county. There's a Hartford Fund, a Fairfield Fund, a Bakery Fund. If you were able to find places to access these type of funds with the goals that state that it's just to uphold or stand up an organization from this community, no matter what the business is, that's the avenue that we need to start moving into. I didn't partner with an MSO. I partnered with an investment fund. They are solely money people. They don't know cannabis. They're not putting their people in my organization. They literally handed me one very amazing Connie who just does money. That's all she does. And they control every cent of their investment money for their investors. Meaning that I was poor before I did it, I'm poor now, and I need to stand my business up before I actually start making anything as a partner to do anything. So this is where you're like, cool, dude, you just paid $3 million to a fee. Yeah, that went to the government. What did we do to show revenue? Because it's a business. You have to show revenue someplace to start making money, no matter where you are. So now you're in a place where, cool, I control all of this the moment we stand it up. Because their part is right now, build out a $30 million. Because that's what it costs to build the cannabis space. The minimum cannabis space that they require us in the state. You cannot do it in stages, and then it continues to get pushed back. We have known for months, I've paid a year in rent already. Rents, mortgages, properties, a year already. The DCP has been out twice. They've shot down 2 plans already. And nobody cares that the social equity portion isn't getting online. Literally leaving it for the large established entities to continue to open up. And that's what we're gonna start seeing before any of the social equity adult use shops open up. You're gonna see more stores open up from the larger MSOs, or maybe not, because some of them are going through their own acquisitions right now. Some of them are doing their own restructurings right now. Like, why are we pushing for the individuals here and the other social equity individuals to actually get stood up in some form? You know what I mean? I can't wait till some of your dispensaries open up. That's where I'll start shopping.
And we will acknowledge Kennard Ray is in the building.
Yeah, there he is.
Social equity dispensary owner is here, so we do have one that's up and running in Manchester. Don't spend all your money there until I open up the show. But Lou helped us segue into a process that Kennard has completed, but that we're in the midst of. So can you talk a little bit about what it's taking to get your businesses going, become operational? I know currently I'm in the process of preparing for zoning approval for my retail location, and that is, I'm definitely learning a whole lot, and it definitely is a process, and so it's been interesting. So I just want to know how's it been for you, and at what stage are you with your different businesses? Have you found places yet?
That's our biggest issue. Zoning sucks. I've learned that throughout this whole process. Just finding the building that fits for you. Cannabis is really delicate, right? So you can't have a building that at one point the roof was open, like it was raining inside, it was leaking, or the electric boxes are destroyed, and you have to worry about that. You want your building to be perfect so that you don't damage any of your product, and you want it to be the right size. As Louis said, it has to be the right scale from the beginning, right? So the biggest thing for us is finding a location in an area that's properly zoned, and I hear that that's a common issue with a lot of us.
For Section 149, the DIA code is we have to be in the DIA, which are primarily residential areas, not industrial areas where we have to put, the type of building that we have to stand up. So that has been an issue for many of the approved cultivators.
Yeah, so now that we have our space locked in, God willing, nothing happens with that. We're building out our site plan so we can go before the local municipality, to get zoning approvals and approval of our site plan. But parallel to that, the things that get into this industry as well, working on expungement clinics and figuring out how to really build up a strong workforce here locally in Connecticut so that we're not going outside of the state to find our workforce. I know Phi Federal has partnered with the state colleges to create a cannabis certification. So we're looking at doing something similar in the cultivation space so that we can really be able to provide jobs and living wages to people in the state and really in the greater Hartford community where our cultivation will be. So that's really, to me, really exciting to be able to be a part of, hopefully hiring, or putting 100 to 150 people to work throughout my community. So.
Trying to find a suitable space. We are working on locking down a few locations in Fairfield County. However, I definitely want something in the Hartford County area. And for some reason that's been a little tough. I made calls to owners and they're like, no, I don't want that kind of business there. Or they just really increase the price of rent. So it's been a little tricky in my part of town. That's what I would say. And though it's legal in the state of Connecticut, there are a lot of towns with moratoriums. So there's like a little disconnect. There's a big disconnect there. So that kind of makes it tricky.
And I will say, while Lou's coming to the mic, towns are starting to overturn their moratoriums. I saw the town of Hamden, where I live, just opened up their town for cannabis businesses. And I think a lot of municipalities were just trying to pace themselves, kind of figure out what was happening and decide how they wanted cannabis to be implemented in their town or city. And I'm not mad at them for that, but I am glad that they're being thoughtful about it and making sure that once we do come to the municipality, we feel welcomed and wanted, because that is another issue. Even with me, like from the beginning, all of my businesses are New Haven based. I did have an office in Hartford and throughout Connecticut, but mostly been New Haven based. And so my desire was to put all of my business, cultivation, dispensary, in New Haven. And it just didn't work out for me between not being able to find appropriate land or a building that was already, stood up, or, with them being next to schools, because again, these DIAs are, so it really caused issues trying to find places. And, it is in your heart, we're touting that we come from these communities, we want to make change in the communities, we want our community that we come from to get our tax money. Like, I want New Haven to just go sick, like fill all the potholes, open up some schools, like do some, like everything. Like I want them to improve my neighborhood, and those things matter. So it's really important that we are able to look.
So what Kibra's alluding to is absolutely huge. Every time I've gone through zoning, the one question comes up: how much are you going to pay our town in taxes? You give them the figure, and things change for some reason. They're like, wow, really? That's your pro forma? That's what you're going to pay in taxes? And that is still, to get to that point, is super difficult. We are in the building phase of our cultivation facility, and we are in the finalizing our lease in Stamford for our retail facility. Industrial zone is our cultivation facility. It's a 150,000 square foot building, and we're looking to put about 200 jobs in. So, and then retail is going to go into Stamford, Connecticut. We have 2 locations with LOIs in, and hopefully one of those go up and go through. And that's a special permit, so some towns are a little different. We've gone through some of that. So the town of Stamford is very, very at least open to having those conversations, but they're going to limit it at some point. And that's what some of the new towns that are opening up their moratoriums, open up more space. And then we're going to be looking for a second location, which will probably be realistically, I've been looking up in this area. So that's where we're looking.
I'm joking.
Yeah, but that's where we are. I was accepting HVAC stuff this morning, like I said. So ordering the process, because that's another thing. On the building, it's 14, 16, 19 week lead times. So
Materials
for everything.
So they said we can go till 2:45. So what resources and supportive services have been provided to you? Maybe from the state, from the Social Equity Council, your local municipalities. You know, they got that accelerator class. You know, got something positive to say?
Lawyers. Lawyers, to me, probably one of the most critical pieces of this, and navigating at least the agreements and the regs and things like that. Even though I am an attorney, it's a different area of the law that I don't practice, and so I think a lawyer is probably one of your best assets in this. I would also say people who have been in the industry, like Aaron, there's the whole front row here with folks who work at various different parts of the supply chain, other advocates, and just really good business-minded folks. I think once you take the difficult regulations and all of that out of it, it is a business at the end of the day. And so having business acumen and really surrounding yourself with people who have good financial, know how to read pro formas and know what a convertible note is and things like that, and being able to navigate through local zoning processes. So I think just really good business people is good to have around you going through this process.
It was mostly a trick question when I said, what resources have been used by the state?
So what I think that is the biggest thing as we talk about all of it, and this is the one thing that really has gotten me through, I guess, the whole thing, is this is a community, and you are doing this with the people around you that you absolutely love, and the people that are going to be your team. And I really have to say, to the people up here, you've all been very good friends for a very long time. Shout out to Aaron, shout out to Evan. These are people that come and spend time in your office, spend time in your home, and where you love. The biggest shout outs go to those two guys right there. See those guys right there? Those guys have been by my side for like 30 years. We take care of each other. Those fucking guys right there. Without the people that support you, you'll never know it. I've gotten to meet some of the most amazing people through this journey. Ace is sitting there in the middle acting like he ain't one of my brothers. But that's what this is about.
Yes.
That's what cannabis is about.
Okay, I want to get a little controversial for a few minutes because we only got a few minutes left.
I love it.
Let's talk about the currently proposed legislation that is out there that is potentially jeopardizing our businesses, social equity. Let's go. I want to start with, how about start on a positive note? 280E. Let's talk a little bit about that. So there's currently legislation being presented that who knows about 280E? Oh, that's a pretty. Let me give you all a quick. I love telling this story because I make it funny. So the history of 280E. Back in the 80s, there was a person selling illegal substances. I'm assuming, the hard stuff, cocaine, heroin, and he was trying to write off, his baggies, his scales, because these were business expenses. And guess what? The IRS let him do it. And Congress was like, oh, never again, we will not allow these people to write these kind of things off. And they came up with the 280E tax code that said that any person running an illegal business and selling illegal substances cannot write off usual and normal expenses that most businesses can, like payroll, like supplies, like things of that nature. So, fast forward to now, we're not running illegal businesses. We're actually state regulated, licensed entities, and we're still being treated as if we are criminals. And so the 280E legislation that is proposed will, what we call decouple. So the feds are still gonna not let us write it off. We can't do anything about that until federal legalization happens, but within the state, they can give us the ability to write that off. And this could mean a difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we're talking about social equity licensees who are already gonna be struggling to just make ends meet. And don't think just because we have investors or partners that they're just like, shoot money at us. It's not happening. We're having to fight for, beg for every single dime. And so this is why that's important.
Yes, I guess the call to action would be if you want to see the cannabis industry actually thrive here in Connecticut, that you should contact your local legislator and be in support of decoupling the 280E, the proposed legislation that's currently coming down the pipe.
So what does that mean to you? Decouple 280E, the weed gets cheaper. That's the end goal. If you want to see the prices of cannabis go down, the overregulation that's set up in the state, the huge roadblocks, those are the things that end up costing all that extra money. Not being operational for a year has cost me a lot of money. And we're invested, so that means we have to make sure that gets recouped at some point. You know what I mean? It forces us to have to go into longer terms for whatever money that we take loan. As any other business, if you're a barbershop and you want to get stood up with the best barbershop in the area, you go out and get a loan for your business through some means, usually through regular banking. We'd have to go through investment channels or capital investment funds or something like that to make that money happen, and they charge absorbent rates. So now being unoperational for a year, not creating revenue, created a 100% interest rate on top of everything we start spending. Now that's going to get recouped right back to right back to the customers, in all honesty, which is tough. And then we open up, and then we open up a retail facility. We're forced to sell the 4 existing growers because we weren't able to now stand up any of the cultivations. And they're not cheap. They're not looking to lower their prices. They're literally looking to maximize their margins before we all get online.
Right.
So now, it just keeps, the bottom line is less regulation, decouple 280E, and the weed will be cheaper.
Deschedule marijuana.
So I was told I should ask if anybody has any questions. Okay. Okay, we got our first question. How do we feel about the proposed hemp bill? I love my fellow hemp growers. Like Lou, my boy, he was a hemp grower and he paid $3 million to convert. I feel like the playing field is already pretty packed right now. And if we allow more people to come in as cultivators in a state that was run by 4 cultivators to now go to possibly 28 cultivators, is signaling towards oversaturation and the failure of social equity business. It's not personal. It's not, a thing where it's us against them. I hope they still have love for me and I have love for them, but there's not room for that right now. That's the way I feel about it. That's the answer for you?
On the way on the other side of it. So, it cost me $3 million and I still had to run my business. If the reasoning is to get cannabis to the market faster, New York State's having horrible trouble with all their outdoor grown cannabis by their hemp farmers, which sucks. There's another proposal to allow the hemp manufacturers to start selling their products in the dispensary. I'm all for that. I think that's absolutely awesome because as a cultivator of THC, I'm not going to grow CBD for adult use market. I'm going to buy that from the existing Connecticut hemp farmers. I think that this is a space that it shouldn't be an us versus them because I'm still a hemp farmer. I'm still a hemp manufacturer. And because of that, I now get twice the amount of visits from the regulators. They absolutely hate me. They show up at every one of my places and they're like, "Hell, we're here again," all 12 of them. And I'm like, "There's 12 of you drug enforcing me? Are you sure you're gonna keep them all separate?" Yes, said it 18 times. It's good to see you guys again. It's not even funny to see 12 people, 12 regulators walk up and, "Hey, we're just making sure you're keeping your hemp separate than the cannabis."
Let's let him ask his next question.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we feel you. The struggle is real.
I'm a veteran, disabled veteran. Is there actual veterans being represented as businesses out there?
I know there are probably lots of veterans who are in the industry, but I will say personally, my grandfather, who is a Vietnam War vet, will be the head of my equity joint venture, which will bring me
My brother just got back. He's in the Army, so he'll be with us, making sure everything's straight. I don't know everybody in our area. I wish I did. Realistically, I know these guys.
And I will honestly say, I'm not sure about veterans traditionally